And if you look down at membership gains and losses, you will see from 2001 to 2012 that the membership losses in the Presbyterian Church USA have consistently been higher than the gains. For a decade, but that's actually 3 decades. And I believe the number is we have lost in 3 decades 20% of the membership of the PCUSA. Now in Richmond, we have a higher rate of loss than nationally and for the Presbytery. And I'm trying to remember this, but I believe that in the Richmond area, our membership loss over a decade was 27%. I think that's right. In the Presbytery, it was only 17%. And in the denomination, either 21 or 23%. So when we talk about inspiring faith in Jesus Christ and nurturing faith in Jesus Christ, we have some challenges before us. Also, within a decade in our country, the category called nuns, N-O-N-E-S, not N-U-N-S, but N-O-N-E-S, those who hold no faith has doubled. Those who hold no faith don't want a faith. It's gone from 10% of the population in the United States to 20%. And the estimate for children who were raised in church and active is that 60% of them will never return to the church. So there are challenges before us in terms of what will we risk, how deeply will we grow, how we will begin to do that, the work of evangelism in a way that is authentic and is winsome and joyful and can draw people. It is also how we can be authentic about our doubts. And as someone in our small group last night said, real friendship is where you can share what's really going on and not make out like everything's hunky-dory. Authentic witness is the challenge before us. If you flip back to the front, your little graph, and there's good news and there's bad news about First Presbyterian Church. The average Presbyterian worship attendance in our denomination is 53% of congregational members. And one of the things you have to know is generally the smaller the church, the higher the participation. So I went to the PCUSA statistics and got our average worship attendance, River Road, Salisbury, Crestwood, and Grace Covenant, which used to be as large as First. Probably 30 years ago, Charlie? Yeah. So what do you notice about those numbers? Can't hear you.
Ours is the largest congregation with the smallest percentage.
Yeah. Worship attendance is one of the big indicators of the health of a congregation. It's more important than membership, because membership is just whose name's listed. Worship attendance is a kind of chief indicator of health of the congregation. If you turn the page, you'll see a chart of FPC membership, which is in the blue, worship attendance, which is in the red, and Christian education enrollment. Now, our Christian education enrollment, which looks really high, that's for any time anybody comes in a class ever, even if it's once. So that's the reason it's so high. On a Sunday morning, we generally have about 80 people in church, children through adults. Average participation in religious education in PCUSA is 37 to 39% of the congregation. In our point in time survey, the religious education was 37%. If we do it as a percentage of our membership, it's 6%. So Charlie asked us to look at touches, meaning anybody who showed up all day long on November the 10th. And whether they came to just Sunday school or worship in Sunday school or youth group or whatever else. And that actually was a nice number. If you do it in the spring, that number's a lot lower. Fall and winter are going to be better times. Why do you think that is? Schedule, weather,
Routine.
what?
You're getting back into a routine.
You're getting back in your routine.
Surviving the winter.
Yes. Surviving the winter. How about sports teams?
Yeah, that's what it says, sports schedules.
Yeah. Children's sports schedules. So, how many people have family that have sports who are scheduled on Saturday and Sunday? Yeah.
Sorry, I refuse to sign up for sports.
You go. All right. All right.
Rosalind, I'm sorry, you have to fill in some of the dots.
Okay.
So, because I don't have kids. So you're saying that in the fall, because the schedules are only on Saturday, they are free to come on Sunday?
No, it's just that people are gearing back up. They're ready. They're getting in their schedule. They're putting church back on their calendar. As one person said to me, during the summer, they just don't come to worship. They just take the summer off. And so, in the fall, we have better attendance. For families, and this isn't just true about First, but who have sports-age children, attendance always goes up and down. And there's some families in the church who will not join a league that plays on Sunday, and there's some that do. But sports tends to be high intensity for our families.
One of the things we've noticed, 10 years ago, the Sunday after Labor Day, there would be this huge jump from summer to fall, and Sunday schools and all would look amazing. Now it takes all the month of September to get back to that bump, that the first Sunday is better than summer, and the second is better than the first, and about the third or fourth Sunday of September. So it takes people 4 weeks longer to get back than it did 10 years ago.
But I think they're scheduling more sports on Sundays. Like we signed up not knowing there was Sunday sports, so we were doing church and sports, football on Sunday.
Yeah.
And but it was crazy, they always had 9 o'clock games.
9 o'clock in the morning?
Yeah, on a Sunday, and we would
Wow.
run from the game to church. And it was, but I, then we were like, no more. So, they don't tell you.
We also have a congregation that travels a lot, and that does affect it as well. So go to the pages on financial giving.
I have a quick question about the membership numbers. Do you know if any of the other churches today kind of scrub the membership numbers? And, if you haven't been for a certain amount of time, you drop off. And do we, I don't think we do that.
Well, we
Or how is
haven't done
membership
it,
defined?
Fines, yeah.
we haven't done it in 6 years. And the process is that we need to contact people by letter, reach out to people, find out what's happened and where they are. But it's been 6 years, and it's about time to do it again. And the 1,400 is high for we know that all those people aren't active.
How many
So
people are there at Christmas Eve?
Yes.
Christmas Eve, 5
Or
o'clock.
Easter, or, you know,
Right, Christmas Eve at 5 o'clock is 500 plus. I think it's been as high as 575 in the chapel as well. And then you add another, this year is actually high at 11 o'clock. It was another 200 people there.
A lot of those people though are relatives.
family, yeah.
There's
Yeah,
family.
out of town family, but I guess I think at the Delta, the people who go out of town, and
Right.
Delta, the people who come into town, there's
Yeah.
probably some, at least some indication of it.
Easter, there's,
Eight, usually 700 or 800, right?
it's at least 8.
Is it?
It's at least 800. And that's, yeah, those, of course, are the 2 highest attendance.
I don't even know about whether, I just wonder if people choose to join a big church who might want to sort of be a little bit lost. I guess I'm wondering about intentions going into church membership. I intend to be active and this congregation needs me, or I want to join this massive church and be kind of a consumer and so just, I wonder.
That's hard to know.
Yeah.
That's really hard to know, and as church officers, that's not really our job to find that out. As church officers, it's our job to welcome them and bring them into fellowship. So,
Yeah, I guess it seems like an opportunity if, that's.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, it is an opportunity.
As these numbers have dropped and people have fallen out, has there ever been a program to follow up with these people and ask why they're not coming to church anymore or why they left the church? Seems like that would be pretty good feedback to fix things.
Not recently, that's why it's in the plans. But I'm gonna move on to financial giving, and we're actually working on that right now. So, financial giving page, what do you notice about that page?
It dipped down in the recession.
Right.
It looks like it's outpaced inflation even with limited membership.
It's done, we have done well in terms of financial giving, and if you'll notice, in 2012, the contributions per attendee went up. And this year, in the stewardship campaign, the officers all gave, and they all increased their pledge. And I believe the number was high in terms of the increase, like 25%, which is astonishing. That's just fabulous. And it's a vote of confidence by our officers about what we're doing. So go team. This is a really strong part. Now, one of the things we know if you turn the page is, and then we're going to get up and do a little exercise. So I'm going to move this out of the way. But in churches that are vital and full of vitality and are growing, they have made a conscious shift from looking at being a member of the church to being a disciple. So what can being a member look like?
I think Liz's point, consumer, you can be a consumer.
You can be a consumer of the church. If you're a member of a gym, do you have to show up? No, you don't. Although some of you are very good about going to the gym. But it is a program for you, you're a member. How about if you're a member of a club? You may or may not, although being a member of a team usually has pretty high standards. So discipleship is a different attitude. What does being a disciple mean? It comes from the word discipline, which means it comes from the time of guilds, in which you learn the trade. You learn the trade of the master. You are a learner. So we're going to just read down that column, those columns. Membership assumes people know the basics. We can no longer assume that people in the pew know about Paul, know the story of Abraham and Sarah, know about Moses. You can no longer assume those things. And discipleship churches realize that few people know basic Bible and theology. Instead of assuming, they're going, okay, this is the reality. In membership, lots of energy is spent in maintaining what we've got. In discipleship, lots of energy is spent in working on the vision. In membership, there's a low expectation of growth as disciples. Discipleship, high expectation of growth as disciples. So what's a low expectation of a disciple? Show up? Yeah, you just show up. Do you show up all the time? No. You show up when you feel like it. What's a high expectation of growth as disciple?
Engaged and inspired.
You participate in ministries and committees.
All right, so you're participating in ministries and committees. That's exactly right.
You're invested. You're invested.
You're invested. There was a study done by Search Institute, which looks at Christian development in the United States. And they found in 2000, they did a survey of this massive number of people and found out that the average Christian had not grown from the time, in terms of spiritual development, knowledge of the Bible, from the time they were in college to the age of 70. And so high expectation is that you grow, that you know more about Bible and theology, that you're invested in growing spiritually in this, what our book talks about in terms of, there's God here, in dependence upon God, in this whole thing of giving all of me. And of course, no one does that perfectly, because generally we say, yes, Lord, I'm your servant, and then we take it back a little bit. Just like sometimes we pray for somebody and say, I'm letting go of this concern, and then we take it back and worry about it. So, there is low commitment to growth as disciples. In membership churches, there is a high commitment to growth. That's both as individuals and as a community. In membership churches, they're content with enough. In discipleship churches, they want abundance, the abundant life that Christ promised. Membership churches focus on self and family. Discipleship churches are focused on God, what God wants, who God is. Membership churches are focused on programs. In discipleship churches, there's focus on relationship with God and neighbor and life on life. So we just did word share prayer, and the very end of it is how we may be in prayer for you personally, and not in prayer for your neighbor who's sick. It is life on life. I want to know about you. I want to know about where you are, and also how I can pray for your own growth in faith, which is something we rarely bring up in prayers.
Rosalind?
Yes.
Isn't it true that every church wants to be a discipleship church, and the big question is how you get from one to the other?
I can't answer it at that as a generalization. From the statistics, the answer is no. And
It just seems to be self-evident that people want to be in the right mental way.
that's not how it bears out statistically in the Presbyterian Church. And we know that because of best practices surveys, and you'll see some of that in a minute. Membership churches, the focus is on the church. Discipleship churches focus on the world. It looks at the uncharted areas and those who need. It is concerned about the people who have never known the love of God and Jesus Christ, and those people who are hurting, who could be blessed by being brought into relationship with God. We also, in membership churches, focus on what we can do with the resources we have. And in discipleship churches, we focus on a passion for God. So what we're going to do for a few minutes is we're going to line up in the hall, and we're going to do a kind of continuum on these factors and see where you think our church is on these different things. Okay? So I'll read the first one as soon as people know the basics of faith, realize there's few. So first, just everybody go to the hall, go against this wall, and I'll read you, and you decide where our church is.